Hello, everybody. Welcome to your favorite Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I am your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by...
Joshua Mervell. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of various Spider-Man comics where he's just had some random appearances. I think they're from 1982, Mike?
Yeah, around there. Yep,
Yeah.
1982. You're
Okay.
right.
So, yeah, there's some some interesting stories in these ones, but...
To say the least.
Yeah.
And we decided to bring in some special guests this week. Once again, special guest number one. Do you want to introduce yourself again, G.I. Jolie?
Hi, it's G.I. Jolie. I'm the co-producer of the Comic Book Syndicate, and I'm here again to talk about comics, specifically.
That's right.
Spider-Man comics.
And because two of this week's picks were written by Chris Claremont, we decided to bring in the world's biggest Chris Claremont fan. Do you want to introduce yourself, special guest number two?
I wasn't expecting that kind of an intro, but thank you very much. This is Chad for the first time, I think. I hope.
That's right. Well, I mean, to be honest, the reason that your name came up is because we recently reviewed the Dark Phoenix Saga, the universally acclaimed benchmark of 80s, superhero comics. And I didn't really like it as much as I did when I was a kid. And I know that you definitely didn't like it as much as you did when you were a kid, correct?
Yeah, but I'd only ever read it as an adult.
Okay, that could be part of it. But we posted that review on a few Facebook pages, and we got a lot of hateful remarks, to say the least.
I'm used to it.
This is such a great intro.
Right. But it's okay. We're being honest, right? And, it's all about...
That's what matters.
Exactly. And so anyway, this particular comic, Marvel Fanfare number 1, that's our first pick for this week. And this was originally commissioned as an issue of Marvel Team Up. But then I think what happened was it took it took the artist Michael Golden so long to finish the story that I believe what happened was the characters were now out of continuity. Like, it was so out of sync with everything else. They're like, why don't we just make a special project out of this? And then they made number 3 drawn by another artist, Dave Cockrum, and number 4 was drawn by Paul Smith. So it became this really big way to introduce this new comic, Marvel Fanfare, which at the time had the highest quality paper on the stands at the time. It was also the most expensive comic book at the time, and it was only sold in comic book shops. So this was the big initial story that they used to launch this project. And it's always been kind of a holy grail for me, and I think this is the second time I've read these first 2 issues, and I've always had mixed feelings about it. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just going to say quickly, I also have mixed feelings about Chris Claremont. I do love him, but I have mixed feelings about him. That's all I'll say. Chris Claremont's obviously known as the writer of X-Men for, I believe, 17 years straight, and Michael Golden, the artist, is mostly famous for doing Micronauts and
Star
the
Wars,
NAM.
right?
He did one issue of Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was it. But he's mostly known for covers. And he's also one of the most influential artists of the 70s because people like Art Adams and Todd McFarlane all were sort of influenced by him. And so he definitely left a huge mark, even though he's only done a few comics. So this particular story, I believe we mentioned this before we started recording. It starts out really good, and then it kind of takes a weird turn. But basically what happens is... okay, let's see if I can summarize this. Is basically we have the ex-girlfriend of Carl Lycos. Carl Lycos is Soren, who, for those that don't know, is kind of a half-man, half-pteranodon, I guess? Mm-hmm. Right. And so the ex-girlfriend of Soren tries to get Angel, the former X-Men Angel, and his girlfriend Candy Southern to help him track down Soren and kind of figure out what's been going on with him in the Savage Land. And then I don't remember how this goes public, but J. Jonah Jameson finds out about it. Do you remember, Josh?
No, I don't even think that they really say why it goes public. I can't remember.
Okay, but anyway, so Peter Parker ends up, going along for this mission with them to the Savage Land. Again, for those that don't know, the Savage Land is a mystical land in the Marvel Universe where time kind of has stood still for millions of years, and there's dinosaurs and cool monsters and humans all cohabitating. And Kazar the Savage is the superhero that kind of lives there. He's kind of like a Tarzan ripoff. And so basically, they take this helicopter ride into the Savage Land to kind of find out what's going on. When they get there, they come upon what is this thing called?
Like a pteranodon?
No. They come upon this abandoned city.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They
I don't
just
remember
call
what
it
it's
the
called.
Citadel. Erected in memory or in tribute to Magneto.
Right. Okay, so this is all going back. We're referencing old X-Men comics. So basically, the first thing that happens is they get attacked by these Savage Land mutants. Or I always thought they were mutates, but I guess they're mutants. So they get into this big fisticuffs battle. And, I mean, there's more to it than that. But basically what happens is they get into this big battle. And then Spider-Man and Angel get captured. And these mutants have this gigantic device where they're going to demutate them, right? De-evolve them.
De-evolve them and mutate them all at the same time, I guess.
It's confusing because I just watched an episode of Star Trek with the same plot. But anyway, so they de-evolve them in number 1, and then by the time we get to number 2, like we don't see what happens to them quite yet. But when we jump to number 2, we find out that what's it called? Angel has been turned into. Wait, what is Angel again?
He's like a giant, like hawk human.
Like a man bird. Like he has feathers and claws.
Right, like a harpy
but he's a
almost.
humanoid. Right. There you go. And Spider-Man has been turned into a gigantic spider. So of course there's fighting, and more fighting, and then the mutants try to turn the device onto what's the girl's name again? The blonde.
Tanya.
Yeah, they try to turn it onto Tanya, but she's rescued at the last minute by what's his name? Sauron getting the idea to use his vampire-like powers to suck the energy out of like, and you're laughing in the background. Suck energy out of her so that she is not de-evolved.
Right.
And then basically he kind of rescues her.
Does the same thing with Spider-Man and Angel as well.
Right, and then that's pretty much it. And then he turns into Sauron, and then he takes off. So he was trying to use his powers without turning into Sauron, but of course he did turn into Sauron.
Right.
Then he takes off, and then basically Peter Parker is all back to normal, so he gets on a helicopter and takes off, and then that story ends, and then it does continue next issue with the Uncanny X-Men, but we did not read that issue. So we're just going to talk about Marvel Fanfare number 1 and 2. And I'd like to start off with our special guest Chad this week. Chad, just the story. Tell us, what did you think of the script?
So the script. Okay, so like what I have notes. I took notes, and there are 3 layers to this. Like there are things about the story, about like the A to B to C to D, that I don't like. There's a lot I don't like. I got bored. I got bored because, one, I feel like I've read this story a million times. Now, if you zoom out a little bit, there are things that I kind of really liked. Like, I know that you introduced me as a person that doesn't like Chris Claremont, but I actually have some good things to say about him because he's adept at just getting right to the action, or at least like getting rid of I was going to say he gets rid of exposition, but he doesn't. There's plenty of it. But like the scenes, he sets up a scene very well. Now, if you zoom out even more, I don't know why I'm reading this. It is just resetting the pieces. Like, who cares how Carl Lycos goes from being a dude in a loincloth back to a dinosaur? Why? Nobody cares. Like, this Tanya woman, yeah, she's his girlfriend, but like, she's also his sister? We'll talk about that in a minute. But like, nobody cares about this little anecdote about Peter Parker and Warren Worthington go to the jungle and turn a scientist into a dinosaur. Like, nobody cares. We can just go and read about the X-Men fighting the Dinosaur Man. Like, that's the whole point. We don't need all this setup. We don't need to learn about Tanya. We don't need to learn about the mutates and the mutants. We don't need to learn about the Citadel. We don't need any of that. But that's way out here. That's like zoomed out. Now, like, if you want to talk about the part that I do like, like, you learn about who Tanya is as she talks to Candy Southern and Warren Worthington about her problem. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You don't learn about her past until she tells you about her past. I like that the story just leaps into her asking for Angel's help, and then it like goes from there. It's like that scene, and then boom, we move into the next scene with Spider-Man, and then boom, they're all together on the plane, and then boom, they're all on the ground because the plane blows up. I like that. It's like, it's the sequence of scenes I like that Chris Claremont has enough cinematic instinct to do that. But then when you get to the actual A to B to C of like the giant captions, the unnecessary paragraphs of text, I get bored again. That was a lot. I'm sorry, everybody.
You know, if I were to say, if this was like a movie, this is like a great way to set up a mission.
Yes.
Like, you got to go here, you got to do this, you got to do that. Perfect. But then once they get there, I really feel like it goes off the rails.
Absolutely.
But I did enjoy a lot of Chris Claremont's prose. You know, I mean, he has a background. He's written some novels for sure, so it's kind of written in an older, more text-heavy style. So I did like that. G.I. Julie, what did you think about the script?
Well, that's the thing, is that I have one very relevant note to that point. Is I wrote this down. Claremont text is overly descriptive to the point where you question his trust in the artist. And maybe it isn't so much his distrust of the artist to tell the story that he's trying to tell, or maybe it is, I don't know. But maybe that's his own fallacy, where he's an author, where he's a prose author, and that's what he's used to. And it just, unfortunately, it doesn't work with comics. There has to be just a balance, and there isn't really a balance. So not only are his characters' thoughts as descriptive as sort of like the narrative panels, their dialogue is just as descriptive as well. So every A, B, C equals D is all very heavy-handed, like Chad said, and it is like reading a novel. And I zoomed myself all the way out, and I said, one, I don't care about this, but two, maybe I would if I was just reading a novel. Like, I would really find enjoyment in it if I was reading a novel.
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that the setup was really strong, and I think that this story has really good bones, but there's just so much like stacked up on top of it that you have to like sift through so much shit to kind of get to like the good stuff, right? Like the premise is kind of cool, but there's just so much extra things going on. I really love the setup with her going and meeting Angel, and like Chad was saying, the backstory and her like finding out who she is not boring, because we don't have to stop to explain who she is before jumping into the story.
Right.
We learn along the way. The beginning almost felt kind of like the beginning of like an Indiana Jones story, where like we kind of have like this plot where they have to go find this person in this mystical land. She goes and she finds the person she needs. They kind of like get going on the story. You get a little bit of the plot and like what this land is about and this information, and then the adventure starts like right after that, and you're thrown right into it. And being thrown into the action is really good. Not having to like sit down and describe everything that's going on. And I think that after they hit the Strnad with the helicopter, that's really when things start to fall apart for me. When they start having to like over explain everything, and like not really understanding what's going on in the action sometimes too, with things just kind of happening, especially with like when Angel and Spider-Man are being like hypnotized by, I can't remember her name, but there. So like there again, there are some really. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, Vertigo.
So yeah, again, there's some really like interesting, fun stuff buried in this, but I feel like it's just so jumbled up with so much dialogue.
So I've got something to say. Can I just quick? All
Yeah,
right, great.
sure, go
All
ahead.
right, Josh. I know we just met, but I got to push back on the idea that there's good bones here.
Okay.
I mean, I know that I touched on this earlier, but like the whole story, like it doesn't feel like a Spider-Man story. It feels like an X-Men story, mostly because Chris Claremont wrote it, but we don't. Like it exists, but we don't need it. No one needs this kind of a story. The only people that would need this story are the people that follow like footnotes. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So Carl Lycos is a man again, and he's living in the Savage Land wearing a loincloth. Like, no one cares except Chris Claremont and like the dudes that follow indexes. Like,
right.
Like.
Can I point out one thing, though?
Yeah, hit me.
This is I've never liked the Savage Land being mixed in with the X-Men, okay? And then I found out years later, oh, wait a minute, the Savage Land was introduced in X-Men. It's actually an X-Men
from like
idea,
the 60s, right? Like that was their first adventure.
One of the first. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And then I also found out that when Neil Adams, when he did his big run on X-Men, which was only 5 or 10 issues, he had the Savage Land and Sauron and Kazar in there. Then when John Byrne did X-Men, he had the Savage Land and Sauron and Kazar. Then when Jim Lee did the X-Men, he did the same thing. So it's almost like become this tradition where they're just so tied into X-Men that I know you say that nobody cares about Sauron. I don't really care about him. But I think hardcore X-Men fans love Sauron the way that like Doctor Who fans, they just expect the Cyberman to come back every season.
Okay,
right?
that's very fair.
So it's kind of like
I will say that nothing ever changes. Like it's maybe it's the land that time forgot, wherein they go back every time the X-Men have changed, but the Savage Land has not changed.
Let me throw this at you too. I think when I mean by there's good bones, like I think that there are some good story ideas going on here, but at the end of the day, nothing changes in this comic. If it's going to focus on Sauron, or however you pronounce it, Sauron. If it's going to focus on him, we want something to change with him at the end of the day, right? Like nothing. Like after these 2 issues, everything's kind of in the same exact spot as it was before.
Oh, no.
So,
the only thing that has changed is that Sauron has gone from a man back to his dinosaur dangerous shape.
Which we already thought he was in, right?
Right,
so
exactly. So why waste 2 pages? And you just got done saying that Marvel Fanfare is more expensive, harder to get. Like...
Agreed.
You know, like, what's the point of this? Except for dudes that want to fill out their collection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wait. Okay, we'll get back to that in a minute. Pardon me. I just want to talk briefly. We're going to talk about this completely separately for a minute. Let's talk about the art without saying anything. I want to know, Chad, your impression of this artist. Are you familiar with Michael Golden?
No, not at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is your first impression of this art?
Okay, so you're going to make fun of me, but I thought it was like John Byrne?
John Byrne.
Yeah.
John Byrne.
Yeah, I can never say it right, and it doesn't matter because we read the name, we don't say the name. I thought it was very, like, the musculature on everybody. Maybe I'm just used to... I'm just going to call him John. That's easier for everybody, right? John draws Angel a lot. I think he was probably one of his favorite not, like, supporting X-Men characters. And this double-page spread reminded me a lot of John's art in that. I know that you just got done saying that this Michael Golden guy was influential, but I don't see much that's influential here. It looks a lot like art of the time. Or at least, like... 80s artwork.
Well, that's the key.
Yeah.
It was not like art of the time, but by the time the late 80s came around, this is what art looked like. But I'm going to argue it's a lot because of him and again Art Adams and Tom McFarlane, but he was kind of the first one.
Okay.
But But yeah, okay. So Jolie, I don't think Jolie and I have met Michael Golden, but I don't think we've really talked about his art on any of these podcasts. What do you think of this art, Jolie?
You know, it's art. It's not like revolutionary by any means. To me, I kind of look at art in the context of its history and in the history or pantheon of art. And it's for somebody whose name I see a lot at conventions, it's underwhelming. It's not as spectacular as I expected it to be, but I mean, that could just be this issue. I'm not sure. Like, I'm just flipping really quickly through issue number 1, and I'm on the page where it's Spider-Man. I think it's digital page 14. This is horrible. The anatomy is terrible is not a terrible enough word to describe how monumentally bad this art is.
Here's the thing, Josh, well, I'll get to you in a second.
Sure,
I'll just say that Mike Dell and I covered a Michael Golden Batman comic on Flea Market Fantasy, and he did say that he appreciated some of his design techniques and all that stuff, but we both agreed that in his early career, his anatomy was terrible. And you're right, this Spider-Man is completely bass-ackwards wrong. But Josh, go ahead.
No, I completely agree with everyone, especially with the anatomy. I think that the art works for the issue. I think that his style kind of fits with the Savage Land feel, but it doesn't fit very well with Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man has never been like this gigantic, jacked dude, and in every single panel, he's just huge. Like, it's so uncharacteristically like Spider-Man. It's weird. Like, his muscles are so defined and like bubbly and huge that it doesn't look like he'd even put his arms down in some panel. Like the first splash page.
Which page?
The first page of the
like page
issue
1?
1. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like there's so many lines and defined muscles that don't look like real muscles in Spider-Man alone. Like just under his arm and under his pecs, there's so many just like drawn bubbles, and that it just looks.
Well,
I don't know.
Even if you move down towards like the pelvic region as well, and then out towards the thighs, and it's not right.
No, and then even later on, when Spider-Man is like attached to the board, like he's restrained, his wrist and like forearm are huge. They're like the size of his head. If you go down to I don't have the digital pages now, but yeah, when he's restrained, like his arms are just gigantic, and like his forearms are so short too. Like, it doesn't look like he has a wrist.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. But here's the thing: is if you want to go right back to the splash page, that we were just talking about, I just want to point out the texture on Angel's wings and the texture on the rocks behind them, and just the general layout of the page. I really like that. And then if you flip to the next page, the double page spread, I really love this panel composition of being inside the helicopter, then seeing the helicopter over top of the house, and then cutting down to a different angle looking back, and then cutting down to another angle. And if you look at every single panel, it's from a completely different position. Even on the bottom with Angel flying with the eagles kind of beside him, and then cutting inside to them sitting talking to each other. I think that's why I like him so much. Then you cut to the next page, and there's this great design of Tanya reading, and it kind of just blends in with the other panels like that. I don't know.
It's very cinematic.
No, those are my two favorite pages. Like, I could talk about just these two. Well, okay. So you asked me to talk about one specific page, and the one where Tanya's telling her backstory in all like the colors, the bad colors. That was the page I was going to talk about because of the composition factor. I think you're absolutely right that the texture on the wings and the musculature and the terrain all feel a lot more contemporary, like almost 90s-ish. And not even though that I kind of was like, oh, it's from 82, but like, you're right. I'm looking at a page that feels like it should be X-Force, you know what I mean? From 91.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
it just comes down to it. Like, some artists are just not good at everything. He happens to excel particularly in like landscapes and architecture and in composition as far as like page design and layout. But you know what? Sometimes he just falls short on the human figure and anatomy.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I feel like his style fits so well with the like a Savage Land type of story, because it is very like natural and like you can bring in a lot of textures and it feels right in the story. And
well,
even
it's a Conan terrain, right?
Right.
So you have like a Frank Frazetta. Help me with that one. Frank Frazetta, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Frazetta. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Like hypermusculature, these lines that go on and on, textures on top of textures, and just like a real kind of bloody color palette. It makes sense, and it just doesn't make any sense with Spider-Man and Angel.
Right.
It's funny because I think he did one more Spider-Man story after this, which we will get to in a later episode, but he actually ended up inventing the spaghetti webbing that Todd McFarlane used, and his style changes a lot by that point, so I'm looking forward to reviewing that one as well. But anyway, so let's just put it this way, Josh, compared to an average issue of Marvel Team Up, how does this issue stand up?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Like, for any flaws it has, it was night and day compared to an issue of Marvel Team Up. Like, this felt like a movie, and Marvel Team Up feels like, I don't even know what it feels like Saved by the Bell, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess, Julie, you've been reading Marvel Team Up. How do you compare this to an average issue of Marvel Team Up?
Yeah, in comparison, it is. It's like a 10 out of 10 in comparison. Mm-hmm. But that's only if that's what you're doing. If it was a standalone, on a scale of 1 to unnecessary, I would make it's like super unnecessary. Its existence is questionable. Why would you spend this type of money on writing, artists, paper, distribution, marketing the way you did? Like, it's...
I can understand it for Spider-Man. I can understand having like, okay, we're going to take Spider-Man and we're going to pretend he's Conan in the Savage Land. Like, I can get the concept there. But like, you pair him up with Angel, is that the only way to get him there? It's just weird to me.
Probably. Well, you know what the hilarious thing is now that if you remember in this story, Peter Parker, when he's talking to J. Jonah Jameson, he's like, hey, well, why? Just because I've been to the Savage Land before? Well, what he's referring to are issues of Amazing Spider-Man 103 and 104, which was one of the first stories written after Stan Lee left. They were done by Roy Thomas, and Stan Lee hated Spider-Man and the Savage Land so much, he fired Roy Thomas, came back to Spider-Man just to fix the title, to get him back into New York and, going to high school or college and, fighting with J. Jonah Jameson and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it's clear Peter Parker does not belong in this milieu, I guess you could say. I definitely agree with that. The other funny thing about this is that Chris Claremont also teamed up with Michael Golden for... the famous Avengers Annual number 10 that introduced Rogue. And I've read that issue and I've read these two issues a bunch of times. And no matter how many times I read them, I can never remember what the hell happened. It's like, I don't know what it is. Like, I think Chris Claremont's a good writer. I think Michael Golden's a good artist. But it's like they don't have synergy or something. They're like the opposite of Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Right. It's like they don't... I'm sure that they like each other, but their work does not fit together.
Right.
That's my...
I think at the end of the day, the reason why these ones aren't memorable, these two issues aren't memorable, and why I probably won't recommend them, is because things happen, but they don't mean anything at the end of the day.
Right.
And nothing really sticks with you. So in the moment, there's definitely some really cool things and like small details that will stick with me, but this story won't.
So I definitely would recommend this to read as a study, but don't read it for entertainment. Judge Jolie, what about you? Do you recommend this?
Okay. Yes, because it is the seminal first issue. I recommend reading the first issue to see what all the hubbub is about. But don't worry about the second fanfare because it doesn't really get any better. Just know that it happened and move on.
All right, Chad, what do you think? Would you recommend it?
No. I in theory I'm going to echo everything Jolie said because you're absolutely right. You can see like what they were trying, what they did right and what they did wrong. But having read the story, I think it would be far more interesting to have like a weird friendship with Spider-Man and an angel, and they like make jokes back and forth about this crazy time they had in the Savage Land, but we never read about it. Like they could make jokes about like, oh, remember that time I was a spider and you turned into a bird? Woo! You know, like, and everybody around them is just like, what are you talking about?
They're like, you wouldn't get it.
Right. Like a total, like make it an inside joke because we didn't need the story. You could just very quickly make like a caption that said a story that was never told and how Sauron became, I just keep making fun of that name, became the dinosaur again. Because like I just said, nobody needs the minutia of how he did this and did this and did this. We just needed to know that something happened and now he's a dangerous dinosaur again.
Mm-hmm. So, will you go on to read Marvel Fanfare 3 and 4 to find out how the story ends?
I think Wait. Well, wait. Marvel Fanfare 3 and 4? I thought you said
doesn't
that...
it happen in X-Men?
Yeah, it goes on in X-Men,
No,
doesn't
it happens in Marvel Fanfare, yeah. No, Marvel Fanfare 3 features the X-Men, and Marvel Fanfare 4 features the X-Men. Oh. Yeah, it continues.
Why?
Well, are you gonna read it? You gotta find out.
Well, I mean, like, okay, so I don't. I have a lot of opinions about the X-Men. I know too much about the X-Men, and I probably know. That's probably why I'm frustrated with this story because I feel like I already knew it, and you just made me read it. So, I probably know what happens with the X-Men finding Sauron in the Savage Land, and nothing happens because it's the Savage Land. Nothing happens. You know what? That should be their tagline for travel. Nothing happens in the Savage Land.
Come on over.
Okay, folks, if you thought that was bad, now we're gonna jump over to Marvel 2-in-1, number 90. Marvel 2-in-1 is a Thing team-up comic. The Thing was very popular at the time. We've reviewed a few issues of of Marvel 2-in-1 on Quasar Chronology. Right. Unfortunately, those were written by Mark Grenwald and Ralph Macchio. This one is not. Josh, please tell us what in Christ's name this comic is about.
I don't know why I always get stuck recapping the really crappy ones.
That's why you're here.
Okay, so we catch up with Peter Parker and Ben Grimm as they're at this like a fantasy festival. What are they called? A
Renaissance Festival.
Renaissance Festival. Thank you. And this magician who's there dressed up as a wizard. He's kind of this failed magician. His body gets taken over by an actual wizard who is on the run from something, and this wizard starts kind of wreaking havoc, and the Thing and Spider-Man team up to defeat him, while also trying to save the guy that is possessed. I mean, that's pretty much it. We get some more poor Deb Whitman abuse. Like,
yes.
I was reading this. I got really comfy. I had some popcorn actually when I was reading this one, and I sat down. I saw Deb walking with him, like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then one of the first things he does is ditches Deb, and I'm pretty sure I screamed, "What the hell?" Like, why? Poor Deb. And I get this was before her her storyline was poorly wrapped up, but it was not nice seeing Deb again. Let me tell you.
Well, there's even the bubble. She's not really bad looking. She's really a sweet kid, but for some reason I can't fall head over heels for her.
The hell is
because you're a louse, Peter Parker. You're no good, rotten louse.
So obviously, oh my God, I don't know what to say with this. It was a struggle for me to get through this. It was one of the worst comics I think we've read on this podcast. Chad, what did you think of it?
Yeah, didn't have fun. So this is the first time I've met Deb Whitman, and I feel bad for her that she is in a book like this, drawn like this, and written like this, because you only really know Peter Parker has 3 girlfriends, and one of them is Black Cat, and who is this blonde? Who knows? But he treats her like crap.
It only gets worse from here.
Yep.
Well, I'm poor girl, but I'm done with her. Character design terrible. We're supposed to fight a wizard who looks like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I don't get it. And then he animates monsters upon monsters upon monsters. They just keep getting more and more stupid and more ridiculous. I don't know. And okay, so tell me, wait, do we talk about the art now or do we talk about the art later?
You can go ahead, talk about the art.
Okay, so it looks like, and you can tell me that I'm wrong, but like it looks like the Spider-Man strips from the newspapers. Like
the daily strips.
Yeah, like the line work and the heavy inks and just like the low quality of anatomy. Just it looked kind of, I don't know, for kids maybe. Or
here's the thing, Alan Kupperberg, not a very famous artist.
No.
He's done a few things that I recognize. I don't hate his art though. I've never hated it.
It's clean.
I do
it's fine. It just it isn't dynamic. And who the hell decided to have a Renaissance fair? Like,
wow.
Hello, New York.
But
so yeah, let's.
You telling me you wouldn't go to a pop-up Renaissance festival if there wasn't one in the park? I would. I'd be there in a heartbeat. I just want to come to Alan Kupperberg's defense. May he rest in peace. But like, he's an illustrator, right? So even though he wasn't like super renowned, Chad had said that it was very strippy. It looked like the strips, and I mean that's where he made his money. He was a strip artist.
Oh, cool.
So while it isn't as detailed as some of the art that we're used to, and the inking is very heavy in a comic strip kind of way, I think that's just his style, and it's pretty, I would say standard, for lack of a better term to describe it.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it.
Yeah, like I've never disliked his art. I've always thought that he was decent. He's definitely not, he doesn't stand out, but he's actually drawn an issue of Amazing Spider-Man that Josh and I have reviewed. I don't remember which one it was, but it's listed in here. And he also did the issue of Marvel Team Up with Howard the Duck that we read. You remember that one, Josh?
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, not a great issue, but his art, I think his art's fine. And again, the inks on this issue are by Jim Mooney, who seems to be inking everything at this point.
Right, and I feel like he's very good at adapting with what the artist has already drawn. Because his inks do feel very heavy here, but again, that's because it feels like a comic strip. Where when he is inking for John Romita Jr., it feels a little bit more subtle. And then with some of the other artists with Marvel Team Up, he's kind of adapted with them and kind of maybe elevated their art a little bit at times when things aren't as readable or well put together. But yeah, I really don't mind the inking in this one. Right.
So Julie, you haven't talked about the story. What do you think of the story in this one?
I thought it was kind of fun, but that's just because it's like, I am Yeah, I am muted on here, but not in the recording, so at least you'll have that. Anyway, I thought that it was kind of fun. It is definitely strange, and it's like the plot of a Scooby-Doo cartoon, but without the finding out that, well, no, you do find out that this possessed human is in fact a human and not a monster. I have a very poignant note that I know Chad will sympathize with, is that Peter Parker is Paxton Hall Yoshida and will never will I ever go to a pop-up Renaissance festival with that guy.
Yes.
Including Peter Parker. He's a piece of scum, and this book only makes me hate Peter Parker more. I don't know what it is. It's like when his love life is shambles. And when they write about it and then they include Deb, it's like they dig the hole a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. I hear Josh groaning in anger. It just makes me so angry. And like, I don't know if that's you I heard shrieking, but I feel like it was.
It was. It's just, I don't understand why they even created this character. Like, like there's literally no reason for her to be in any story she's ever been in. Like this poor character has been treated so bad, and the hairs on my like neck stand up every time I see her, because I know that she's going to be mistreated, and just like the story is going to be completely awful.
Oh yeah, and then you have like this, and then you shoehorn the Thing in there. And his girlfriend. At least they wrote it in a little bit better, where Deb was talking about it. She's like, "Hey, can we go to this exhibit later? It's by an artist, a blind artist."
But then we cut to them, and it's just Peter talking to her and ignoring Deb. Deb doesn't even get a chance to like step in and talk to her. Like, it's just,
Oh yeah, and then Alicia's like, "You know, I may be blind, but you're treating her like shit, boy. You better run after her." And he goes, "You know, yeah, you're right, Alicia. It was a pleasure talking to you, though." And then he runs after her, but only after having been told by a blind woman who, like, that his girlfriend has left, or his occasional date. Oh, those two words just boiled my blood when I read them. Occasional date. Oh, anyway.
Well, here's the other thing. Never mind that. As far as the actual plot with the magician and all that stuff, because someone said that it feels more like a kid's comic, right? And as I was flipping through it, if there was 1/3 as much text on each page, I might have enjoyed reading it. You know, like, you read like a kid's comic and there's always going to be less to read because it's focused at a younger audience. I could have accepted this story if there, like I said, if there was far less text, but every time I open a page, it's like, oh my God. Like, if you go to digital page 6, I look at this page and I'm like, oh God, I don't want to read it. Because I know it's not Alan Moore. I know there's no payoff. I know it's just going to be all BS, purple prose and exposition and bad dialogue. So it just makes me not want to read it, you know? And I think that's the key issue. I think the basic story, even though it's idiotic, it could be enjoyable if it was just written more sparsely.
Oh yeah,
Julie?
it could be totally entertaining if it was, like, as you said, written sparsely. I think it was when Josh was trying to recap what happened, like the digital page 6, there's so much text in there, and nowhere do we find out why this Rumpelstiltskin-like character has our evil Asian wizard in a web. Like, we don't find that out. But there's like 75% of this shit's text. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Right, and that, I don't think it matters really for this type of story. Like, I don't want to know the backstory of this stupid freaking wizard.
Right,
But there's so much like dialogue and text describing what's going on, but there's still no context and like actual like flavor or texture that's going on. It's just nonsense.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's why sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry.
Well, here's the thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say that I think that's why it for me it doesn't work at the end of the day, because I'm all for like a one-off, like, corny story with some fun art. Like, that's part of the appeal to comics for me, is some of those, like, more lighter issues where we don't need like a dark, heavy story every time. Some fun, poppy stuff is fun. It is great from time to time, but it just doesn't flesh right here. Like, nothing really works.
No synergy again.
And not to mention the fact that when that wizard comes in and is just summoning monsters, they leave a monster sticking out of the center of the city, and in a very cartoon-like way, they go, well, I'm glad that's over. I'm glad your boyfriend's safe. But now what are we supposed to do with that guy? And then Spider-Man makes a very Spider-Man joke, like, I wonder if the Central Park Zoo is taking donations. Wah, wah.
I was just going to say, you might as well have that wah, wah, wah. Totally.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, here's the thing. I feel guilty now, Chad, for... look,
Making
I never
me
said
read
these
it?
comics were good. Yeah, I never said they were good. But I hope you at least had fun reading these comics. Okay, I'm gonna assume you do not recommend Marvel 2-in-1 number 90.
Oh, we're already at the end where we're recommending.
I know you have more to say.
More?
Well,
Unless you want to talk about
there's
it.
a lot
Go
of
ahead.
little things that I think are kind of funny and stupid. And,
Okay,
like,
go ahead.
Well,
Yeah,
okay,
for sure.
so I obviously lost interest with the story.
Yeah.
But, like, in the very beginning where we're getting to know people, like, obviously we talked about Deb Whitman. I never knew this woman, but apparently she's a piece of whatever. And Peter is obviously a douchebag. But, okay, so now if he's supposed to be the damn hero of these stories, why do they go out of their way to show how terrible he is to the people in his life? Like...
We don't know. We can't figure out this whole
I
Deborah
realize
Whitman
that
thing.
the patriarchy is a piece of shit, and like men are like, but like, he's supposed to be the gallant, right, and not the goofus. So why does he treat people terribly? And what message does Marvel and the writer of these stories really like tell these boys that are reading the dialogue here, thinking it's okay? Like, are you supposed to be head over heels with every girl you date? No, Peter, you shouldn't be at the Renaissance Festival with anybody except maybe some friends. Do you have friends, Peter? Do you have any friends at all? No, let's date a blonde.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I completely agree with what you're saying, 100%. And to answer your question, what happens with her at the end of the day is it's not a lesson for Peter to treat people right. It's that sometimes women are just crazy, because it turns out that she has schizophrenia.
Seriously.
Seriously.
This is some bullshit. I don't need to hear anymore.
Because it really, it's... Deborah Whitman is probably the most consistent character over the past few... Like, in all the issues she's in, she's so consistent. She does not change. And it's Peter Parker that even, like, within 1 month changes issue to issue, like, how he treats Deb. And then still, at the end of her story, just to write her off, they throw schizophrenia at her and end it, like, there. It's awful.
Well,
Yeah.
that's too bad.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. There's one good thing we forgot to mention. She disappears from Spider-Man for like 20 years, and then in like 2006,
Oh, did Jeff
she comes
Johns
back.
find her?
No. No, Peter David brought her back. And,
Peter David? Okay, I'm in.
Who I
I'm in.
love. And she ends up writing a book called How Spider-Man Ruined My Life. So she kind of gets it, because remember he reveals his identity in Civil War?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I did
So
not
that's why
realize
she
that
writes
was
the
a
book.
thing. That's...
Yep.
I'll buy Peter David a drink.
There you go. So we'll that's good to hear, because Peter David is coming up in maybe, I don't know how long, but yeah, we're going to be getting to him later on in the year. So we'll probably have you back on when we have Peter David writing, just because.
Like X Factor?
No, Spider-Man. He started out in Spider-Man.
Oh, okay. All right. Sure.
You didn't know that?
No, I don't know anything. I just know X Factor because I was a
Wow.
kid and I only collected things with X's on them.
Okay.
So
Well,
the
now
other
we've
thing,
reached
the
the
other
part of-
thing you guys wanted me to talk about things that I liked about this book. The only other thing that I thought this was kind of interesting. Sorry to run. I'm a steamroller over people, but okay. So like, Alicia and Ben are walking into the fair, right? And Ben is a sad sack, and everybody knows he's a sad sack, and he's like, he hates what he looks like, and he just keeps talking about how everybody thinks he's a freak. And Alicia is just like, oh, everyone thinks you're fine, you're a hero, blah, blah, blah. But like in the panels, everybody does look at him like he's a freak.
Yeah.
And like the moms are hiding the children who would like look like they're vomiting, and he's just like, oh, Alicia, everybody thinks I'm terrible. And it's like they kind of do, which is hilarious because we're supposed to think that Alicia is like wise and knows things, but like, no, Ben's right. Everybody thinks he's gross.
Yeah, I mean, not only are people reviled, but the woman is actually like, put him down.
Right.
You're going to kill my baby.
Yeah.
Really? Wow, that's a jump.
Yeah, he's gonna kill my baby.
I don't think he helps his case any either, because when he hands the kid back, he says, here, I think this thing belongs to you. Like,
It's funny.
Well, maybe he hates kids like me, so...
Honestly, if
it's
the
like
entire
there.
story was just the two of them, like going back and forth, like running into people at this Renaissance fair, there was no wizard at all, and just being foolish and hateful, it would probably be more interesting. But as soon as we got to the wizard, I was out because I thought it looked dumb. I thought it was dumb. I don't know.
I agree. I was just thinking that too. It's like, the first few pages are fine. If it would have just been them hanging out in the whatever this is, it would have been a lot better.
Like a
issue,
bottle
but then-
episode where all they do is like go
Right.
back and forth meeting people and like being
Right.
humiliating themselves, humiliating other people. That would actually be a funny little like one-off issue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like go ahead, Jolie.
running into other members of the Fantastic Four or other Avengers who might also be interested in like a medieval celebration.
Right. And like something like Seinfeldian happens, like Peter loses his wallet. Like that's the whole plot.
Right, and then
That's
he
it.
blames Deb or something. And
Yeah,
so she has to like go through the sewer and like find
Yeah.
his wallet, and by the time she comes back, Alicia's already gone.
Right. There you go. We just rewrote it for you
I'm
viewers
good
out
at
there,
this.
you listeners. well, we're definitely going to have you back on again, especially when we start doing Peter David Spidey comics.
All right.
So hope you're up for that. Sweet. Whew, okay,
We've
so
reached
again,
a portion of this episode where we all apologize to each other now for making us read this journal. That's how
The funny thing is-
Canadian we are.
we started doing these guest appearances just to spice things up, but they've been very hit and miss. These are probably the worst of the bunch.
right. I will say, though,
maybe.
it's a lot of fun talking about them.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really fun talking about how bad they are. It's
Yes.
just having to suffer through them before that.
Yes. Yes. But anyway,
I like
we definitely.
I like Chad's level of spice though, because
Yeah.
it brought about something that maybe we could explore later, which is just to rewrite the issues that we, abhor completely.
I think that's a good idea.
That's so
That's
fun.
we should introduce that as a new feature. But
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm ready.
So yeah,
what do you want me to
I
rewrite?
definitely. Well,
All of it.
You'll find out in your next appearance, okay?
All right.
So I definitely want to thank Chad for joining us.
Thank you.
Like we said, we'll definitely have you on again. It's sorry Eric couldn't join us, but I'm assuming he's in the room somewhere.
I don't know where he is.
Okay.
He's my Deb Whitman.
Okay. Anyway. So yeah, we'll definitely have you on again. We want to thank G.I. Jolie for joining us again. And if you haven't suffered enough, we'll have you on again soon, if not next week. And that's about it. And Josh,
Yeah.
you can take it from here.
Yeah, we also want to thank you guys for listening to the podcast as well. It really helps us when you leave us a review on Apple Podcast or share a link to the show. If you leave us a comment or review on Twitter with the hashtag HCTSpidercast, or mention us at HCTSpidercast on Twitter, we'll make sure to send you a like and retweet and probably respond back to what you're saying. So please get in touch with us, because we want to keep the conversation going, because we want to know what you guys think about the podcast and the issues we're talking about.
That's right. So every week we cover 3 to 4 issues of 80s Spider-Man comics in roughly chronological order. Next week we'll be back to our regular scheduled scheduled issues of amazing, spectacular Marvel team-ups. So until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spider-Cast.
All right, see you then.